Welcome to the November the 23rd, 1999 taping of It Happened in Grand Prairie, as we bring you the history of Grand Prairie and some of the wonderful people that live here that have great histories to give to us. And such is the case today for our history tape number 382. And we're so delighted as we're celebrating our Native American Indian Heritage Month to have a very special gentleman. And his name is Eugene Vincent Brown. Now that doesn't sound very Indian, but he really is, and we want to welcome him to the set today. Eugene, we're so glad to have you with us.
Well, thank you, Ruthie. I appreciate you inviting me here. I like to go make talks at different places to let the people know what the Indian people are all about.
All right.
And I think most of the Indians in the Metroplex area and all over the United States are more than willing to go to schools and churches and visit with Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts and anyone that will listen, so they can see that the Indian is not
he's a very
stereotype.
Special people.
Yeah, they're not stereotyped. You know, the
Yeah.
movies, some of your movies, you know, they depict the Indian as being a savage or dumb, or and we're not that way. We've been in the society long enough and have gotten the education, and this is one thing that's important to the Indian community, is to get educated, but at the same time to educate you and tell you what we're all about.
About your culture. I'd like to know about your family, and you are a Native American Indian of what tribe, and where did it come from?
I'm from the Miami tribe, and originally we were in Indiana.
All right.
And when we had several battles, and we won some of them, and we lost one major battle, and it was George Washington. After the Miamis had defeated the government twice, he told General Anthony Wayne, some people called him Mad Anthony Wayne, to come and wipe the Miamis out, to just get rid of us. So he trained his army for 3 years, and he got an army that was really trained.
Really tough, huh?
And he came in and he did defeat us, and there were several of the other tribes that in our Confederacy that were along with us, and as a result of that, a big part of Ohio, which was our homeland, Indiana, and up into Chicago. And the name Chicago means little onions. Right. There were a lot of onions grew up there. But half of our tribe was moved to Oklahoma, and that's what this picture is right down here. It shows the removal. And by the time this happened, they had built the Erie Canal, and this Erie Canal came down to our homeland, Peru, Indiana, and they forcibly loaded our people onto that canal boat. The soldiers came in there, and they loaded us onto 3 canal boats, and they took us from there to Fort Wayne, Indiana, and then they put us on another steamship, and they took us down to the Ohio, and eventually up the Missouri, up to Kansas City, and moved half of the tribe to a place in Kansas. And if you go from Oklahoma up to Kansas City, you will go through the place where they were. And then eventually they decided that the railroad was going to come through there. And so they said, well, we're going to move you a little bit farther down. So now they are in the northeastern corner of Oklahoma.
All right, and where did your family end up?
My family ended up in Peru, Indiana, and different places around there. And we had a reserve there. And we were farmers. We always had been farmers, and this was what they want. But we also hunted, we fished, we gathered nuts. I have a list of the different food stuffs that we ate.
Did y'all have a big Thanksgiving? Did you ever celebrate that?
We thanked every day was our Thanksgiving, because we had a real respect for all of the animals. We didn't kill an animal without thanking that animal for providing himself for our meal, or our hides for our clothing and stuff. So, yes, after we did learn the ways of the white man, we had our Thanksgiving.
Your Thanksgiving
we had
also.
our Thanksgivings, we surely did. And the Indians have been acclimated to the way of life. And my mother went to Haskell, and this is Indian school in Oklahoma. And a lot of Indian people went to Haskell. And they were taught to forget their old ways, Ruthie. We lost, during the wars, we lost a lot of our artifacts. That we would have our things written down on hides and our records and this and that. And it was a custom, if an army came in and wiped out a village, they made sure that they burned all of their records. Anything that they wanted for their personal self, they would take. But we had vast corn crops, and Miami was one of the first ones that had white corn, and it was unique to Miami. And but we would have vast cornfields, and when William Henry Harrison came in and at another battle, and Mad Anthony Wayne too, they remarked, and it's recorded in history books, that they had never seen such vast cornfields.
Cornfields.
And they would, at one time, they burned what they had estimated to be 20,000 bushels of corn in an Indian village.
You just mentioned your mother. I believe you have a book there, a Miami history, that has a picture of your mother when she was a little girl. And I'd like for you to hold that up and see if we can get our camera clued in on that, because I'd like to have that as a record.
All right. Yeah, this is a book. It's called The Miami Indians, and then this is a book of my.
Now let's hold that right under your face.
All right.
And you and I are now look. Isn't that a good picture of your family? And if you'll point your finger with the book still looking at the camera, can you get your mother there?
Well, that's my mother right there.
This is your mother right
my
here.
Mother right there.
All
and
right.
Grandfather.
All right.
And grandmother.
Yeah.
And then this little boy over here had his hands folded in his lap.
Yes.
So he was kind of a favorite of my mother. Whoop, right there. So she imitated him and put her hands in her lap. And when the picture was developed and when my grandmother saw it, she gave her a spanking. She said that was not ladylike to hold her hands in her lap.
Oh, that was the way the boys held their hands, but oh my. Well, that is a good picture, and this is a wonderful research history book. And is there any other remark you'd like to make about this book? Is there any other exciting thing in here that we need to know about?
There are so many things. Here's a picture here of a white woman that was captured. Quanah Parker was the white woman around here, but this was a white woman, a girl that had been captured, and there's a story altogether. I could talk about this for the rest of the day, but I know we don't have time.
No, we want to talk about some other things.
Our people have been very persistent. Our land was not supposed to be taxed, and all of the land around there had been purchased or occupied by the settlers. And our reserve was prime land. So they couldn't tax us because the treaty said that we were not supposed to be taxed.
Exactly.
So they wanted this land, and the only way they could get it, we weren't drunkards and we weren't lazy. We had farms, and we had cattle, and some of us were as prosperous or more prosperous than the settlers that lived in the land. But they wanted this land. So what they did, they went to Washington, and they found a clerk. Did I say crook? They found a clerk. And they had that clerk somehow or another take our federal recognition off of the books.
Your treaty.
But they didn't tell us about it.
Yes.
They waited for years and years, but all this time this tax was being calculated, and they waited.
And the interest.
Right. They waited until such time as a severe depression hit, where even the white settlers, the white farmers, where they were losing their farms. And the man that had the money, that wanted this land, that instigated this whole thing, at that time they knew that the Indian people were in a financial shape that the white people were, so they went and nailed on the courthouse wall a notice of sale of our land. And we said, wait a minute.
We have a treaty.
You're not supposed to tax us. They said, well, you're not federally recognized anymore. So we went to Washington. And when we got there, I say we, I'm talking about the Miami people.
Yes.
And when they went to Washington, they went before the Senate. The Senate says, no, that is illegal. The only way a tribe can lose its federal recognition is through a Senate vote.
Yes.
It's illegal. So we said, well, what are you going to do about it? Well, I guess you're going to have to put it in the form of a suit. And we've had that in a suit now for 103 years this year. And 2 weeks ago in our newspaper from the tribe, they asked everyone if they would write to the senator.
Yes.
And ask him if he would vote for House Bill 361, I think it is, to reopen claims
that case.
for the tribes that are not federally recognized, that have lost it in similar ways, such as I. And there are many tribes like that, Ruthie. There are many tribes like that.
All right, now what does a fine Indian person like you do now?
What do I do now?
I know you've lived a long time. Where were you born?
I was born in Quapaw, Oklahoma. That's down in the northeastern corner.
Would you name your mother and father their Indian names?
My mother, I have forgotten her Indian name. No, it was Miss Qua. No, it was something Comqua, and that means a branch, willow branch that's hanging over a stream. And my grandfather's name was Kimyotama. And have you ever been out and you thought you saw something off on the out of your vision, but you didn't? There was nothing there. Well, that's what that means.
That's what that means.
And my mother didn't teach us anything about the Miami language because my dad died when I was about 2 or 3 years old.
And what was his name?
His name was Charles Alexander Brown, and he was part Cherokee. See, I'm part French. That's the reason I'm almost the same color you are.
All right. I'm
French, Miami, Cherokee, and Shawnee. My grandmother had some Shawnee. She was Miami and Shawnee. And so I'm kind of mixed up. A lot of Indian people, you can look at them and tell, that they're Indian people.
Yes.
And then a lot of other Indian people, they've got to put all kind of garb on, and stuff that looks Indian, and hey, there goes the Indian. Yeah. Well, you're not recognizing him actually as an Indian, but you're recognizing his regalia he's wearing.
What did you do in growing up? Did you grow up in Oklahoma?
I like to hunt frogs. Yeah, I grew up in Oklahoma. And Mother never did tell us much about any of the Indian things while we were growing up, and I eventually asked her. She could speak Miami. And being this around Christmas time, I'll tell you this little story about a turkey. We used to go up and visit my grandma, and she lived up around Miami, Oklahoma, on a farm, and she had a bunch of turkeys. And Grandma and Aunt Susie, she was Shawnee, lived up on the hill, and they both had turkeys. And Grandma had this big old tom turkey that had missed them 3 or 4 days, and she knew where he was. He was up there visiting those other turkeys. And they both had little clay pipes. And in the evening, not every day, but occasionally, and this was our summer vacation visiting Grandma. And they would get together in the evening and they would light up their little clay pipes outside and smoke, and they could understand each other's language. See?
Yes.
And so she saw her turkey out, walking around out there. And when he got ready to go, well, she said, "Nancy, that's my turkey there." She said, "No, that's my turkey." Well, Grandma didn't say anything. And when it got time for her to go home, she got up and she called that turkey Pinsquawa. And she says, "Come on, Pinsquawa, let's go home." And the turkey followed her home.
And that turkey followed
that's
her.
my Thanksgiving story. And so I didn't really, wasn't really aware. I was aware when I was growing up as a boy that I was Indian. And
Did you go to school in Oklahoma?
I went to school in Oklahoma, just a public school, and I know every year they would have some kind of an Indian program. You know,
And you get to be it?
No.
No?
My sister, she finally sang a little Indian song, and but I didn't do much because I didn't know anything about it. I wasn't aware or really conscious of being a Miami until the movie come out about roots.
All
and
right.
I think at that time, you know, a lot of people started digging into their ancestors.
heritage, didn't they?
This was a great thing that happened, you know, that made a lot of people conscious of who they are or where they came from. See?
What brought you to Grand Prairie, Texas?
Oh, I got out of the Navy when I was discharged. I was discharged down in Orange, Texas, and I had a brother working in Fort Worth, and I came to visit him on the way to Oklahoma, and I met this beautiful blonde-headed girl.
All right, now tell me about her.
So I'm there I am cutting the Indian blood down some more. She's a German, so I just fell in love with her.
Yes.
And
when you married, do you have children?
I had one daughter. I had one daughter.
And let's give her name.
Her name was, she's married now, is living in Kansas, and her last name is Rothrock. So she's not married to Indian, see?
Yeah,
And Jenny Lou is her first name. Jenny was after my wife's mother, and Lou was after my
We don't
mother.
have your wife's name on this tape yet. You better
Oh,
tell.
it's Estelle Francis. Estelle
right.
Francis. She was born around down at Sherman, Texas.
All right.
But while we're talking here, before I forget it, I would like to make mention of a very special person that has helped me find my roots as I was
All right,
inquiring.
let's go for it.
And that was a lady that lived in Indiana, and
You want to hold up her
this is
picture?
a book here about Always a People, and this book was written. Catlin made paintings of the Indians years ago.
Yes.
And there hadn't been any paintings made of the Woodlands Indians. So this lady got together and went to all of the Woodland Indians, about 42 of them, the leaders and the important people, and she interviewed them.
All right, let's get her picture next.
All right, this is her picture here, and her name is Laura Marks Siders. And I'd like to get a good view of that as I can.
Let's fix it. All right, now that's
But
Laura
that's
Marks
Laura
Siders.
Marks Siders, and she was as the historian for the Miami
Woodlands?
tribe of Indiana.
Oh my!
And she has been basically responsible for holding the tribe together and going forward for years and years and years. And this lady is widely respected in Indiana.
Oh,
and she's on practically every
board
and museum board, and she is asked questions constantly about how to pronounce the Indian ways, and she has been primarily responsible for helping to get our language revitalized.
Oh, how wonderful!
And
well, what is this picture that you have in here?
oh, this is a picture after our federal recognition was taken away. We had to raise money. We sold all of our artifacts. There's not very many artifacts right now that any Miamis own, because we had to sell all of our artifacts to get money to go to Washington
To fight that suit.
these suits that we've been fighting for 103 years So what the Indian people would do is they would have a reenactment, kind of have a pageant, and this was in 1927 when this pageant took place. And Laura, let's see, Laura is this little girl.
Right there.
Right there. Now that's when
That's
she
her.
was. So she has, ever since she was a child, she has been
Responsible, hadn't she?
trying to raise money to fight our cause, and we are a persistent people.
Good.
We will not give up, and the wind last night. This is not talking about yesterday. This is talking about last night. We have been blessed with good weather.
Yes.
And it's unusual.
Yes, it is.
And this is what we call Indian summer.
Mm-hmm.
And there are many stories about Indian summer. But last night there was a cold wind that blew in.
Yes.
And this is blowing in the fall season, or it might be winter season.
Yeah.
But fall is a special time, you know. Up in Kansas, there's a weed that grows. It's called I forgot what they call it. But anyhow, this weed it dittany is what it's called, and then it grows square. And in the wintertime, the stalk will split, but the root still has moisture in it.
Mm-hmm.
And then on a cold night, you know, when we don't experience this in
Yes.
Texas, but occasionally it gets cold.
Mm-hmm.
But when the temperature starts down, it gets colder and colder and colder, and it gets 32, and it gets down to 12, and it gets down to 8.
Wow.
The vapor in the root system is going up, and as it escapes out through these cracks, it freezes, and it freezes into a spiral. It's a sculpture that only the Creator can make. And this is what they call a frost flower.
A frost flower.
Frost flower. And if you touch it, it will break. And then
Oh.
when the sun comes out and hits it, it just
It shatters.
disappears. It's very delicate. And there's a time in November when autumn surrenders, and it's tired from bearing its weight of glory. The leaves, they fall down and they embrace Mother Earth. And there's an audible closing sigh in the woodlands. And if you're there, you can hear it. But a lot of us are not there because the woodlands have disappeared. See, they've disappeared.
We're not sensitive to it all.
Yeah. And
How about all these rocks that you have here? Where'd they come from?
These are rocks that have been tumbled down over eons that are glacier rocks. And the glacier came down through Indiana, and it stopped in the southern part of Indiana. It didn't come all the way.
Yeah.
Okay. When this sheet of ice, maybe miles thick, came down, did the people, if there were people then, did the people just move away and go further south, or did some of them adapt to living on that ice?
Yes.
But this is one invasion that came up on this land, is this glacier.
Yes.
And there's another invasion that came up who has been more destructive to the Indian people. And that was when the settlers came in, and as they would move so far, the Indians would have to move
on
ahead
out.
of them, and then they would move so far. But this glacier didn't stop at
No.
a certain point. It went plumb to the
other
west
side.
coast. See? So while we're at it, being that you picked that up, this is a little flute here. It's made out of river cane.
All right.
And I would like to make a presentation to you of this.
Oh, that is
I
wonderful.
made this morning, and it's made out of river cane.
Oh, how wonderful.
And
And did you sign it?
I signed it, and I I put a name on there.
All right.
And I'm presenting this to the Ruthie Jackson family, but this name on this is, I'm probably not pronouncing this right, is Nodinokwa, and what that means is the wind woman, someone, let me get the right.
I need for you to get one of your favorite flutes, and I want you to play it for me.
Oh, well, it's not my favorite, but...
and then you can tell me that story, because we just have 3 minutes left, and I need for you to play it for me.
This is one that I've just finished up. It has an eagle on one end, a bear, and it has a lot of other, this is a storytelling flute. And I think you all recognize this song. This will play it better. I'll let you see what yours sounds like.
All right.
But
beautiful.
That's fun to. I make these and make them all different kinds.
I want you to show and tell me some more, and show me finally that one that you're working on is. This is what they look like before you start carving.
This is the wood one. Now this one is made out of cane. This is one, and this is going to be for one of the main persons in the Potawatomi tribe up in Michigan. And his Indian name is Gugwanjukwashe. And what that means is a grizzly bear long claw. So what I will wind up with here is this will be the part that you blow in here, and then this will be round, just like this one here. And then there will be a grizzly bear with the claws on it. And
I need your full Indian name. We've got 1/2 minute left.
I have two, but I'll just give you one, and that's Pimyotama. That's Pimyotama.
And what does that mean?
That means something that you thought you saw go by, and you looked around and there wasn't anything. And all of us experienced that at some time or another. See?
Eugene Vincent Brown, we've run out of time. I needed 2 hours with you. I'm going to have you back to finish our story. It was wonderful to have you with us.
Well, thank you.
And you are so gifted and so talented and an artist and all of the good things. And thank you for the interview.
Well,
and this is Ruthie Jackson reminding you that history is as we live and do, and especially Eugene Vincent Brown, a Miami Indian, a very special young man.